All right, so I had an absolute blast and a pleasure to sit with Dan from Arctic Mojave on Instagram. We went all the way back to the beginning when he first bought the Gladiator and how the Gladiator is the reason that he ended up picking up a camera and self-teaching himself how to do his editing and all that good stuff. And I mean, you can see by the pictures and the videos here that he is incredibly talented and he is constantly putting out fresh, beautiful content like this on his social media. We also touched on his entrance into the overland world. He's putting a tent on this bad boy and he's going to be doing some camping, which you can well imagine there's going to be some incredible content coming out of that. And I mean, the guy puts tracks on a Gladiator and rips around the sand dunes. Let's face it, we all wish we could do that. That's a no-brainer. So please sit back, enjoy this episode. I know I really enjoyed it. So here we go.
Does Pour Off-Road Coffee Company make incredible coffee? Yeah, they definitely do. Is Pour Off-Road Coffee Company veteran-owned and giving back to that community? Yeah, they are. Is Pour Off-Road Coffee Company part of the 4x4 world, part of the overland community, part of a community that just wants to go outdoors, have fun, get muddy, see amazing sights, and just have a good time with good people? Yeah, they definitely are. So we want to say thank you to Pour Off-Road Coffee Company for being a part of our adventure, being behind us on what we're doing, and sponsoring these episodes of podcasts or whatever you want to call them, and just being an amazing company. It's veteran-owned, it's personable, and they make great damn coffee. Yeah, they knocked that one right out of the park. So thank you to Pour Off-Road Coffee Company for being a part of our family.
You're probably right.
Oh man! All right, well, hey, let's get into this.
Yep.
Who's Dan? Who are you? Where can people find you? What's the backstory to your absolutely monstrous rig? And like what's Arctic Mojave all about?
Yeah, so there's no crazy story. I don't have a history. I don't come from a lifelong family of Jeep family. I don't know. No one in my family has ever really owned a Jeep except for me. So I kind of jumped into it. It's always been, a dream of mine is to own a Jeep. I think a lot of kids, whether it's a Jeep or some other kind of off-roading 4x4, 4Runner, whatever it may be, they have these dreams. And, I never thought that I'd have what I have today, honestly. Like it was I always figured it would be a dream to have a pretty cool off-road rig. And then, I just was in the right place at the right time. Sold my motorcycle. It was part of the deal. I had a Triumph Scrambler, like a 2015 Triumph Scrambler. I loved the thing. Just a nice cafe racer. And, I loved it, but I have a family. I have 2 kids. I have a 9-year-old and I have a 7-year-old, 2 little girls. And the motorcycle, as fun as it is, they can be dangerous. It's not really me. It's the other people on the road. You're always kind of concerned about what's going to happen. And then getting all geared up and ready to go. It's like, what can I do to, just have the same kind of escape, but maybe include the family a little bit more. And so that's where the Jeep, in my opinion, kind of fits right in there. And there's so much you can do with a Jeep, whether you're crawling or you're at the dunes on tracks or, you're overlanding. There's just so much fun potential that you can do, but you can do it as a family as well, which is awesome to me. So big family guy. And so that's where that fell in. I sold the motorcycle as part of the deal, got the Gladiator, and, I just started having fun with it. And honestly, it was, a Mojave out the door. It wasn't a cheap vehicle to buy, but I had, so I didn't really plan to do a whole lot right out the gate. I just decided, it's a cool looking truck. I'm going to take pictures of it. Right. And so, from there, I turned into what you would kind of see as an influencer, kind of, taking photos. My photos start to really hit that algorithm and people started to notice, my rig, and whether it was the orange accent, which I did real early on, on that grill, caught people's attention. Don't know what it was, but something I did took off. And And so I started getting accessibility to different parts from different companies saying, hey, we love your photos. Let's see what you can do with this product on there or that. And then Quadratech came along and was like, we want to help you out a little bit. And so, yeah, I just kind of took off from there, and I just started building what I didn't think I would build as fast as I was starting to build it. So it kind of led into that, and just started to try and figure out what was my vision. What did I want to build here? It's one thing to, have product coming your way, but you also kind of have, what is your vision? What do you want your rig to do? What do you want it to look like? And I'm a pretty picky person when it comes to what I like. I have a style, I have a vision, and I've passed up significant opportunities in order to stick to my vision. But yeah, that, through those resources of those companies reaching out to me and asking for photography, it just kind of all worked out really well. So I really got to build up to what you see today, and it's been fun.
Yeah, because the Mojave, I think, like that only came out in what, 2021? Like, what year's your truck?
That's a 2021, and you're probably right, because if I know that the Gladiator they reintroduced in what, 2019 or something like
2019, yeah.
that. Yeah, and I from the beginning I was like, the Rubicon, and then one day I was looking, I'm like, what's this Mojave? I didn't even remember seeing it. So I looked into it and I was like, okay, it's got some orange accents. That's pretty cool. And then, I started looking into the specs on it and was like, all right, they've kind of beefed up the framing a little bit, and you can go up to like 50 miles an hour and 4 low. I'm like, what is this thing? Like, this is pretty sweet. So, I started considering that, and I was like, that might be more my jam, is something, that's not quite the rock crawler, something a little bit more comfy with the Fox, the 2.5-inch Fox shocks. I'm like, this could be more convincing to my wife to get rather than a Rubicon. And when you drive those, you feel it, that's just, that suspension. But
Yeah.
with the Mojave, it's like, it's as comfy as a CRV, which, it's cushy. So that really kind of sold me on that. And yeah, and I just like the look of it. The hood scoop, I know it's non-functional, but it just looks a little bit, more aggressive.
Well, no, like the reason I asked is because, like, yeah, like your truck is aggressively built. Like it's a
Yeah.
build that most people will probably take about 5-10 years to get built out. Because like you've done everything on this thing. Like
Yeah.
what's left to do? I mean, in your eyes, not necessarily if you switch stuff out, but like what have you not touched that you're like, you know what? I kind of like it's on the back of your mind, like it's on the wish list. Santa's bringing it.
Yeah. So a little bit more on the, maybe some of the, because I just did the gears, and honestly, I should have gone 513s on my gears. I went 48s. And at the time, I wasn't really planning on 37s for tires. The opportunity happened to present itself pretty much right after I installed the 48s from Revolution gears, and I love them so far, and they're perfect. They're perfect for what it is, well, what it was with 35s right now, and even with 37s, I still think it's a really good sweet spot. The 48s with the 37-inch tires, and those Nittos are heavy tires, so you feel it. But with those gears, it's good. I am planning to put a tent on there. That is in the works, so I will be getting more into overlanding, getting out there camping, kind of exploring the Midwest. So we go up to Door County quite often. We've got family with land up in the UP of Michigan, the Porcupine Mountains. Going around into Michigan, we have, there's a lot of neat areas to explore around here that, aren't necessarily Utah or Wyoming, where there's just massive mountain ranges and just areas to explore. But, there is stuff around here that's pretty neat to explore. So, getting that rooftop tent is, a big item for me right now, is getting that in. But other than the gears, so then after the gears, what else? Everyone's like, are you gonna ever lift it? And I'm like, I don't need to lift it. I'm not a rock crawler. I'm not out on the trail. I'm not pushing limits with getting over boulders, and I don't know that I necessarily need to lift. It probably would be helpful, but a big part for me is, I'm in suburbia. So, I don't really want my truck just sitting in my driveway outside all day. I'm in the Chicago area. It's going to get snowed on. That's going to be a pain, so lifting it is honestly not in the works right now unless I get a sponsor to like help me upsize my garage door because I'm literally rubbing the weather seal on my garage door every time I pull in and out.
So, which is crazy because I had no idea that your truck wasn't even lifted. When I see the way that it's built, it's like
Yeah.
an illusion to me that it just looks lifted.
Yeah.
I thought for
Yeah.
sure it was.
With the fender chop, putting the Quake LED fender chop in there, you kind of get some of those inner areas out. It kind of opens up the wheel well a bit. You get the inner liners in there that kind of pushes back a little bit more. It makes it, there's a little bit more light that gets in there. And then once you light them up with the rock lights, I think that adds to the illusion in a lot of those photos too.
Yeah.
It's all forced perspective, but I do have, I guess you could say I have a 1/2 inch spacer up front right now. So I did do that when I went to the 37s. We added the 1/2 inch spacer a little bit just to level it out a smidge, but the Mojave is pretty level, out the door, but I wouldn't mind lifting. Honestly, I would, and maybe someday I'll get over the whole like not putting into the garage, issue that I have, but and we'll see when I get my tent. I'll have to then confirm if I can still fit in there. I think I'll be able to because I have a 12.5 inch tire up there now with a ratchet buckle, Y strap up there that adds another 1.5 inches. So I think I'll be real close with the tent.
Man, that's another thing that I didn't even think about when you're saying it's not lifted, that you're rocking 37s on there. Like I used to sell Jeep and Ram trucks. And
Yeah.
I always knew that the Rubicon and the Mojave are set out from factory, like after the JKs, the factory did that where you can put 35s without rub or having to do anything. It's crazy that all you had to do was put a 1/2 inch spacer to get no. So do you get any rub from those 37s?
No, not with standard driving. I haven't noticed anything on the dunes, but normally lately when I've been at the dunes, I've been on the track. So I actually haven't had the 37s on the dunes yet. So I haven't pushed it real hard with the 37s with the 1/2 inch. So there's potential, depending on how it comes down on the bump stops, if I'm really gonna hit, but I'm not doing any really crazy approach angles or anything like that. So I'm usually pretty good. And I've never rubbed with the 37s so far. So
Oh, that's awesome. And then
Yeah.
what about the tracks?
the tracks actually are, there's a lot more space with the tracks. The tracks are just awesome. Like honestly, I'm really excited for winter to get here because that's where those things are gonna just be super badass because like that's where they're meant for. Like we did the dunes with the tracks and we learned a lot. So this was our first time. So they're Ernie's tracks. He built his Wrangler that he sent to SEMA last year with those tracks on there. And he was like, dude, we got to get Arctic out there on the tracks. And I'm like, okay, twist my arm.
Sure.
Like, obviously, yeah, let's go. So we did it and we learned a lot. So the tracks themselves can be like, there's like a tensioner on there. So you can kind of bring in the tread. It's a snowmobile tread on each wheel essentially. And so you can tighten those up. They tightened them up after the dunes about 1 inch, which could have helped. And then you can also mount them with chains to your frame so that they don't rotate on you like they did on me. I don't know if you saw any of that content, but
No.
the track itself, so it's like a triangle.
Oh, and
you have pretty much, and it flipped on itself.
Yeah.
Right?
I seen that. How is that?
So I wasn't driving. I was flying the drone, standing by the beach. My wife was driving. Zach, he goes under Mudstuck on Instagram, Mudstuck JL. So he was with my wife, but my wife was driving, and we were having some issues getting up some of the dunes, and I think it had a lot to do with the tensioning of the tracks. But then also we were given wrong information about the tracks. Someone had told Ernie, do not run in 4-wheel drive with the tracks, like it was going to mess something up, and it really didn't make any sense to us, but I also didn't want to mess up my Jeep, so I played it cautious and didn't challenge the statement that was made. But afterwards, the company reached out to me and was like, "What do you mean? Did you not read the manual?" I'm like, "I never saw a manual. Like Ernie threw them on. Like, I never read a manual. We just went for it." And he's like, "Dude, you run the tracks, you run 4-wheel drive like you would if you were off road doing anything. So if you're on loose, sand, put it in 4-wheel drive." So we could have been running 4 low at 50 miles an hour, and there would have been no issues.
So who told you not to go in 4-wheel drive?
So I couldn't tell you who it was. It wasn't me. Ernie was told that, and who told Ernie, I'm not 100% certain. I think it was someone who got, so he worked through, some sort of transaction to get the tracks, and I don't know who that was with, if it was with, American Truck Tracks or someone else or whoever, but at some point between that transaction, that's the information that was provided. And I know Ernie had pretty much put the tracks on his Wrangler for his SEMA build last year, but I think honestly the first time, if I'm remembering correctly, that they were actually being utilized as they were was when I had them on at the dunes. So
you were going in rear wheel when you should have been going in 4-wheel. Just like normal.
Yep. Yeah.
So
So
your wife was driving, and what she caught a bit of air essentially, and it flipped the track.
So no, she was going up, probably relatively hesitantly, just going up a dune, didn't make it, and was coming back down, and the track essentially came down and went into a divot of sand and just rotated on itself, and it ripped my fender pretty much right off there.
Cool.
The two support the fenders onto the Jeep. One of them was just completely sheared.
So then how, did you just have to jack it up and then it just kind of fell back into place?
Yeah, so we did. We took out my recovery boards, got it under the Jeep. Someone had a jack with them. We slid that onto the recovery board and then jacked it up, and then we were able to kind of dig underneath it and get the track rotated back around.
When you're in the sand dunes, and I asked this because we lived in Mexico for a while, so we went to the beach a lot. How badly is everything covered in sand when you get home?
Well, with tires, it's bad. With tracks, it's multiply that by 5, 10. I don't know. It was crazy. The amount of sand that I got in my air, not my cold air intake, but just the intake into the cabin. You should have a week later, I thought I had cleaned it all off. It was in my tonneau cover. That got clogged. There's drainage tubes for my tonneau cover. I pulled one out and it was just clogged with sand. And I had to blow it out to get it out. And then I was driving and I'm like, why do I feel like I'm getting hit with sand? And I kind of caught it in the sun, and there was just particles of sand just blowing out of my air conditioning vents.
God.
And I'm like, no way. So I go over to the glove compartment on the passenger side and I take it off and I just open it up and I'm like, oh, no way. There was just sand just sitting in there. And I took it out and I had a little story I made, and I just dumped the air filter over, and at least a cup and a half of sand just poured out of there. Because on the Jeep, that intake is right where the wipers are. That's that black grill up top. And it just, when the sand's coming off the tracks, it's just hitting the windshield and funneling down into there.
Oh, my God, man.
Yeah.
It definitely seemed like it was a good, worthwhile time, though, to get a little bit of sand in there. But then, so then this winter, you're going to throw the tracks on and go in the snow.
Yeah. Yeah. So, definitely. There was one account, I don't remember their name offhand, unfortunately. They have they do kind of winter rides and stuff up near them. They're in Michigan. I forget exactly where. I'm still looking into it, but they invited us out and said it would be awesome to have the Jeep on the tracks and to go out there. And so I don't know what to expect for that. It's one thing to do, be out in the open with the tracks, where you can get in and out. Because if it's trail rides, I don't know that it's the best unless it's a nice road almost that's just deep with
wide.
sand. If it's deep with sand and it's a wide road, fine. But you're not going through trails, with that because your turning radius is 0.
Yeah.
So
And
we'll see, but we do have plans to get it out there, and even just I have some family up north, and there's some land up there and some lakes. It would be really cool to just get out on like some of those lakes if they freeze well this year, and just bust it open, across the lakes. So
are you having a flatbed it, or are you just putting them in the box and switching it once you get there? Like because you're not driving
yeah.
on the highway with tracks, I would assume, right?
No, for sure not. You're hardly hitting over 20 miles an hour when you're on the road. Like it's actually, honestly, ironically, it's smoother the faster you go because you kind of get that like hoverboat effect.
Yeah.
Once you're moving, it's smoother, but when you're going slow, it's like you're hitting every one of those treads. So, but yeah, when we went to the dunes, we took it up on a trailer. We had a double wide trailer, so we had a rig on the back, and then Arctic was on there as well. So they had 2 on there, and then they brought the tires and wheels with it, and just had it underneath.
Yeah.
So actually, after our day at the dunes, we were looking to get some more content with. They were gonna put them back on his Wrangler. They never did, but we took them off Arctic and swapped out the. With my tires and wheels at the time, and it's like changing a tire. Like there's no additional attachments. We put spacers on there to bump them out a bit, but you just throw spacer in there, you do your 5 lug nuts, and you're good to go.
Oh, that's not bad then. That's pretty good. And then so I'm always kind of curious because for us, we discovered overlanding, and now we're going to try to get better at taking pictures and figuring out all the settings in the camera and stuff. So were you into photography and that kind of stuff before you got your truck, or was it you got your truck and you're like, damn, this is a sexy thing, I'm going to take pictures, and then because I mean you do a lot of really like I've seen your editing and stuff like that. Like the stuff that you take is obviously you know what you're doing in that sense of editing content pictures, right? What came first?
For sure. The Jeep came first, and so in a way, so the Jeep came before my Sony A7 III, which is my my nice land mirrorless camera, but the eye for photography probably came before that. So it's kind of a funny story. One, I took a lot of art classes in high school, so I get composition, I get art, the golden rules, leading lines, all that kind of stuff. Like I understand colors and what looks good and contrasts and things like that. So I have a really good base. I used to do a lot of painting, so that's probably my foundation. But then when it comes to actually point and shoot, it all started with this phone. Actually, I'm on an iPhone now, but this is my Pixel 6 Pro. It's still my daily. But I started, I don't know if I had the 6 when I bought the Jeep. Yeah, I probably did have this. And I would just point and shoot with that. And the Pixel phones, in my opinion, are the top 2 phone camera on the market. iPhone's pretty good, and Samsung's good. But to me, the computational photography that comes with a Pixel is pretty amazing what they can do, because they're not putting the state-of-the-art technology in the phone. What you get is what they do after the photo is taken. But anyways, I would use this phone, and I'm a really big beer guy. I was a really big beer guy, huge into craft on Untapped. I have thousands of unique check-ins, and I would always take the coolest photos of my beer to post onto Untapped. And that's probably where I really started to get into more photography, because if I were to tell you honestly, my wife is a photographer. She used to do a lot more production and freelance photography, weddings and maternity shoots, stuff like that. So she had the gear. She went to school for social media, not for social media, for mass communications, media type stuff. So she took a lot of photography classes and did a lot of videography. She would do wedding videos and stuff, but then kind of dropped the videos, went to photography. So I learned a lot from her, just joining her on her wedding photo, type stuff. And then when the Jeep came around, I'm, pulled this out of my pocket because it was convenient wherever I was, just to take the photos. And so I started doing that, and I started learning editing. And I would follow a lot of big YouTubers. My wife introduced me to Peter McKinnon.
Oh, wow.
He was like not like physically, like I didn't meet him in person, but just introduced me to him as like a general like photographer
Yeah.
and YouTube guy. So I watched a lot of his stuff. He kind of his style I love. Like to meet the guy would be like he's one of the celebrities, in my opinion, I guess you call him a celebrity, YouTube celebrity that I would love to meet. Just has a very cool personality, really good in front of the camera, and whatnot. And so I learned a lot from that, a lot of YouTube, a lot of learning just by watching other people edit, watching other content, and just taking what I liked and trying to do it myself. I just have to get out there and I have to do it. I can't be sitting there being told, okay, do this aperture with this ISO. I'm like, it'll all just like fall out of my head. It's like I have to just go and I have to do it. I have to learn from my own mistakes and come back and go, oh, I probably shouldn't have shot with those settings. I'll try next time. And you just kind of, trial and error and figure it out. And so that definitely came after the Jeep. And then I was like, you know what? Like my count's doing really well. I might as well pick up the nice camera we have and start using it. So then I started to point and shoot that, and it just got that much better. Like when you have an f1.2 lens, like my go-to is a 50 mil f1.2 Sony G Master lens. Love the thing. I shoot 90% of my content with it. It's so crispy, and I'm the guy. I like angled. I like abstract art. I like things that like perspectives that people aren't seeing. Like everyone can put their Jeep, take a 3/4 angle shot and post it, and it looks good. But it's getting the different perspectives that kind of go, oh, that's different. Like I like that a lot. So that's kind of my style. So yeah, it was a lot. Yeah, I'd say self-taught, but a lot of influence from my wife and YouTube artists. So
Nice. Can you still hear me?
yes, yep.
Am I moving? Because on my
No, you're
screen
not.
I am frozen.
Yeah, you're frozen here too.
Okay, good. Well, you can still hear me. I mean, that's all that matters.
Yep.
No, that's awesome, man. And then so now you're kind of, you mentioned you want to kind of move into the overlanding space a little bit more because
Yeah.
you've been mainly off road 4x4 type of stuff, and now you're going to throw a tent on there. What
Yep.
do you have any like overland plans essentially, like big camping trips? You said you wanted to see a lot of the Midwest.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have anything lined up. I've been kind of waiting for the tent to come in before I, start scheduling things. We're already on a delay. I thought I was going to have that tent by now, and it's on a delay a little bit. So hopefully that'll come in soon, and then we'll really start getting things. Because now we're getting into winter, and I don't know that I want my first family trip of any sort to be in the middle of a Chicago or Midwest winter. Probably not the greatest, learning curve. So we've done some camping in the past, especially my wife and I, just classic ground camping, in some sites in the Midwest. But for me, like I really want to get up into the northern Wisconsin. I have some family up there. It'd be really cool to meet up with them, do some camping with them, get into the UP a little bit. We have some land on, not us, but some family has some land on the coast of southern Lake Superior. So I think that would be a really cool area to get up and get into and just find some stuff, up there. Would be a lot of fun just to kind of get started. But, long goals would be to go out west, get into Colorado as like kind of that first step maybe. I have some good friends out there to connect with, and I think that would be a lot of fun. That would probably be my next. We have been talking about. I should take a step back. We have been talking about going into Canada. We have some really good friends now through Instagram that we've met with and hung out with a couple of times now. He goes by Mohofster on Instagram, and he does a decent amount of overlanding himself, and we have talked about actually doing some snow camping with him sometime. I don't know if it'll happen this season. We would love it to. Maybe at the beginning of the new year, February, somewhere around there, February, March, get up into Canada and explore some of the areas. He's in the Toronto area, so
Okay.
he's got some places that he'd like to take us. So that might be somewhere where we head pretty quickly.
Well, that'd be a good place to bring the tracks with the amount of lakes and stuff like that in
Yeah,
Ontario, man. That'd
yeah.
be a good go-to. But what would you go south at all? Like if you get the tent, let's say mid, start of winter, would you throw it on there? And how far south do you have to go from Chicago? Because Chicago is like I mean, I'm trying to think of where Chicago would be relatively, but you're around New York State, right? Like in that kind of area in the top corner.
Yeah, so we're like, Lake Michigan. So, we're right next to Iowa. Indiana's on the other side. Wisconsin's above us. From like a latitudinal, we're almost in the same line as like New York. Get very similar weather. They're closer to the ocean, so they get a little bit wet, in the winters, a little bit more snow.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're pretty similar weather-wise to like the New York, the East
How
Coast there.
how far would you be how far would you have to go for a warmer, December camping area on the south side?
Yeah, if we got down into Shawnee, which is a national forest in Illinois, which is at the southern tip of Illinois, you're starting to get into mild winters where they may or may not get a little bit of snow, but usually not a ton. So you're usually getting far enough south at that point that it's pretty mild. Maybe at night you're maybe hitting 50s, maybe 40s on a cold night.
Yeah.
So it's not too bad. It's if you're camping and you got all the right equipment and gear, you're not freezing to death, at
Yeah.
negative 20 degrees, so yeah, you can get down that way. And that's probably I would say about a 6 hour drive. So it's not that far. You could do a nice long weekend or, a week trip there and get back and it would feel like a good trip.
Nice. What's next for Arctic Mojave? What's next for you? Like any big changes happening in life right now? Anything that's going on that you want to talk about?
Yeah, let's see. So coming up, the biggest thing coming up for me is that tent. It's I'm going to be getting that tent on there, and then just kind of building out the bed rack a little bit more, just equipping myself with more so just things that I would need for overlanding, maybe a water tank, things like that to just have those supplies that I need when I am camping. Just a couple more storage containers, just places to put stuff. Get maybe some room containers to throw on the roof rack there, and or even on top of the tent. Because the nice thing about the rooftop tent that we'll have, it does have the T slots around the edge with the rack on top of it, so you can load up on top of the tent as well. So it's probably just kind of building out that type of thing, more of the storage containers, the tent itself, equipment that I want to have. I have a pretty decent set of just recovery gear. I got the traction boards. I got I got ropes in the bed too, in the storage containers that I have. I got a winch up front, so I'm pretty good with a tree saver, all that kind of stuff. So I got what I need to get out of a stuck situation. But I think just kind of the ins and outs of just camping and just getting those supplies kind of built out would be my next step. So nothing big. I'm sure at some point I'll get more into looking into the axles, because I am partnered with Revolution, and so we I have the 48s, might upgrade to the 513s. And then we've talked about, kind of some drive shaft upgrades and things like that.
So I mean, on that note, is there any kind like who are your partners? Anybody you want to give a shout out to that's helped make the build what it is now, kind of thing?
Yeah. So the biggest one, the one that pretty much, kind of came after me early on was Quadratech, and they're one of the big parts companies out there. I do a lot of content for them. They definitely took a chance at me. So there's always people always ask the question, like, when do you start getting sponsored? When do they want you, type of a thing. And they there's usually a kind of a standard number, and it's about 10,000 followers is kind of where you hit the point at which companies are like, yeah, okay, we'll work with you. You'll get smaller companies that just want to spread it out there, that'll take you sooner. But Quadratech came at me. They were they were a big one for me. That was like, I knew I made it when Quadratech was like, yeah, bring me on. And I was only at 3,000 or 4,000 followers at that time. But they kind of trialed me for a bit because they were like, typically we don't bring people on for until about 10,000, but they're like, here's a gift card, buy what you would like. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to get some new wheels. And they were really impressed with the content that I gave them with the wheels. So, they definitely brought me on, and now I'm, one of their upper tier ambassadors, which is a lot of fun. And it, kind of gives you a significant amount of, funds to get new parts. So they've been the biggest for me. KC Highlights has been awesome. They've set me up with all of my lighting. So they came on and they brought me in, and this was kind of cool. I liked this. This was their new program that they had started called their Labs team, and it's kind of it's not their ambassador program, but it's what they decided to develop, and it was a way to get their product out into the field, with rigs to trial before it came to market. So I had their dual mode SAE fog lights for like 3 months before they ever launched to market. And I got to put them on, install them, see how they worked. How was the installation? We ran into a couple little hiccups, figured that out. So it was really good feedback for them to kind of figure out, okay, what kind of things might we run into in the real world when people are getting these. So we got all those things figured out, and then I got to try them out, and they're just awesome. Like having a high beam, low beam fog light's pretty badass, and so that was cool. So I got that, and then gave them all the feedback they needed. But then they also requested, as part of that team, to get product photography. So I took photos of the rig and sent them to them, and they use that for like a lot of their product launch and packaging and website material. So if you go look at SAE fog lights on KC Highlights, you'll see you'll see Arctic, on a bunch of the photos there, which is pretty cool. So that was fun. And then they did the same thing when they launched their Flex Arrow 1 pod lights that they have. So just a little, single diode, lights that are pretty awesome. I have 4 sets of those on the rig now. I have 3 sets on the rack. And then I have a set on knuckle mounts from Gatekeeper that are pretty cool because those turn with the wheels. Those are actually really slick. Those knuckle mounts that
those
Gatekeeper
are on the
makes.
inside.
Yeah, right on the inside of the wheel, right on the knuckles. Just a nice mounting bracket. You can wire your, smaller pod lights there. I have the Flex Arrow ones. Wire them, kind of follow your brake lines up, and then as you turn your wheel, you're getting kind of a look at what you're about to ride over.
Yeah.
So that's super awesome. They are super, super helpful. So that was cool. KC has been a big one. I don't know. I don't know if you really call it Nitto. I'm a pit crew member for Nitto, but that's just more content. Like, they give you a discount just for like posting content. They're like the king of swag packs. I have like North Face jackets and stuff, and like a rigid wallet that says Nitto on there, Camelback water bottles. Like I have one of those grills that you have with the butane underneath, kind of like, what do they call those? The Timbuk or the
fire pit kind of things there, or
it's
the Tembo
it's
tusk?
more like a skillet almost.
The Tembo tusk.
Yeah, the Tembo tusk. Thank you. Couldn't think of the name. Yeah, so I have one of those as well, which is going to be great for when we go out and camping. You can scramble eggs and sausage and whatever else on there, and make some fajitas and whatnot. So yeah, that'll be great. But yeah, so and then Extrusion Overland, huge shout out to them. They reached out to me. I already had a bed rack, but when I saw what Extrusion Overland was offering on bed racks, it's like get out of town. This thing is just, talk about customizability. It's so modular. I get it's just extrusion, but they make it fit, they make it work. They have really cool options that you can get on there, like the access gates on the side of my bed. So when you want to get into the deep part of the bed, you can just open up the side of your bed rack, reach in, pull something out and close it. And I even have my recovery boards underneath the bed rack. When I open my access gate, I can loosen a brake that's there, and then slide my recovery boards out, dismount them, use them, and then slide them back in. And they're just completely tucked away and out of the way in an area that you may not normally have anything stored. So you're kind of utilizing every space of the bed rack, and just really optimizing, which I love. So that bed rack is, I I'm biased, but it's the best in the market from my experience.
Well, that's, I mean, yeah, you say you're biased, but like from the sounds of it, yeah, it's, and I've seen it. And that's why when you're like, oh, I want to build up the rack a little bit more, I was like, man, how much more space can you got that thing pretty loaded up as it is.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the one thing that I ran into, so I went with this setup and I love the setup. It's so efficient. Everything works together. Rugged Ridge sent me their retractable tunnel cover. So when I put that on there, you can open the bed, the tunnel cover
Yeah.
without getting in the way of the rack. And then the cover itself has its own T slots. So the bed rack installs right into the T slots of the tunnel cover on top. So you're not trying to squeeze underneath the tunnel cover into the bed, into your trail rail system,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of bed racks attached to. So because of that, there's no gaps. So you're sealed really well.
Oh, that's
The,
perfect.
the bed just opens up. It doesn't roll open, and that can become an issue if your bed rack's too short. You start
Yeah.
to build that roll, and it hits the sides. So that becomes a problem. But with this, because it's retractable, it goes right into the end. There's a canister that it rolls into, but that canister does push the start of my bed rack away from my cab by a good 12 or so inches.
Oh,
So
okay.
I have maybe even almost 15 inches. So I have this gap, but you don't see it because we actually mounted a fifth molly panel over that gap, so it doesn't
Yeah.
look awkward like
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
this
yeah.
gap. But I have plans for that space, and that they're customizing some brackets right now. And there's going to be another pullout. That fifth molly is going to be, I call it like a Murphy door. It's going to look like it's just attached to the bed rack, but you can actually grab it, slide it out, and then, from like, the cab side, you could slide it out, get into a
Oh
case,
shit.
get what
Yeah,
you
yeah,
need,
yeah.
close the case, and then shove it back in. And so you'll have about 2.5 feet or so from each side. So there'll be a slide out from each side coming out of the side.
That's
It's
awesome.
I don't know if I explained that really well, but
I think I
it's
have
gonna be cool.
a good idea of what you're doing, which is cool because especially for us in the trip that we're going on, I'm trying to figure out every which way to possibly save space and utilize space. So no, that's awesome, man. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then an important question that I always ask is, how do you take your coffee?
Black. I used to not like coffee. I didn't drink coffee until I was out of college. And then I always told myself if I ever got into coffee, I want to like coffee because I like coffee, not because I like a little bit of coffee with my sugar. So, I got into pour over coffee. Actually, French press was my first, and I was like, man, this is just good. If you can get fresh roasted beans, grind it right there, brew it with a French press. That is the way to go, and I love that. And then that led me into pour over, which is a little bit more timely. And then from there, now I'm all about efficiency, so I'll shoot an espresso and just get the job done.
No, I'm the same way. I'm all about black coffee, but for me, it was more out of necessity. And like you, I didn't start drinking coffee until, man, I must have been like 24, 25. I never
Yeah,
never cared for it. And then when I was working in the oil field, and we'd have night shifts, and that's where I started drinking it. But
yeah,
I I started drinking black because I never wanted to not be able to have the coffee, and I was
yeah,
lazy. So I was like, I'm just gonna make a cup of coffee, and no matter what, like my wife, she can't if there's no cream, she's not having coffee, and then she's
yeah,
miserable. But I'm like, I'll just have black coffee, and it's I've never cared for the taste of coffee that much, and I've never known the difference between them. But
yeah.
then when I started talking and working with Poor Off Road, then
Hmm.
since then, so very recently, I've narrowed in my palette of coffee, and apparently
Yeah.
I like dark roast. Dark roast is my
Okay.
go-to. But
Okay. Nice.
yeah, so
Yeah. Yeah.
all right, my friend. Before I take up too much more of your time,
Yep.
thank you for. Actually, no, wait. I have one more question that I thought about when you
Okay.
were talking earlier. Because you're heavy into content creation and the whole influencer thing and stuff like that, and because it's all brand new for me,
Yeah.
what are tips and tricks that you have? Because like you're the content you make is without bag licking here, the content you make is great. Like you make some really good stuff.
Yeah.
You're how much time are you spending, and what tips and tricks would you have for somebody like me who's completely bare ass new to it?
Yeah. Yeah, so let's see. First off, I spend way too much time making content. My wife would agree with that. um, so I'm on every day. I daily post. I have a tendency to get stuck into, you can call it a rut, where I feel like if I skip something, it's gonna ruin my rhythm in the
Yeah,
algorithm or whatever you want to call it. But as far as recommendations go, just it's tough because Instagram changed a lot from when I started to what it is now. It used to be photos. That's why I joined. I wanted a place to put my photos, and that's what I love to do the most. I make reels, but I make them good. I'm I may not post those every day because I don't want to just throw stuff together and
yeah,
have it out there. Even though the stuff that I'm like that I don't care about, that's the stuff that hits. And like really, I spent 15 seconds creating that, where I spent a couple hours doing this other cool one, But that it's always the dumb ones that take off because people are always mindlessly scrolling. So don't be afraid to just post. Just
yeah,
even if it's not your favorite, it doesn't mean it's just because it's not your favorite doesn't mean it's not a million other people's favorites or other people think it's cool. But being consistent is huge. If you get out of a rhythm for too long, the algorithm won't like it and you'll almost have to retrain it. Think of the algorithm as your algorithm, not a universal algorithm. Everyone is different. So if you were to have something that, if you see someone that's posting something and it's doing really, really, really well, you're like, well, I'll just post that. But it has nothing to do with what you normally do. It's not your niche. The Instagram, your algorithm will have no idea what to do with it. So you have
okay,
to create what your niche is from the beginning. So help train the algorithm into what you want it to be. So it may not take right away, but if you keep doing it, you gotta train it. It's gonna learn. It's gonna learn. Oh, you like to do this. When I first picked up the drone and started using it for my content, everything flopped. Like I have content that I'll probably repost now because now my drone stuff does well because I think it finally understands what it is that I'm doing and it
yeah,
goes, "Oh, you're part of this group too. Cool. We get it. Here's where it's going now." So there's that consistency. And just have information that is beneficial. Well, how does it help you? So like overlanding, like people want to know like the dumb things that you have to do every day. Like don't be afraid to talk about things that you think everyone should already know because not everyone does. Like you have experience in life history that teaches you to do certain things or that you've learned over the years that may seem like common sense to you, but that doesn't mean everyone knows it and it's probably going to hit. So even those little things, if you're struggling to be creative and create the cool cinematic thing, if that's what you want, cool, do that. But don't be afraid to just post something super simple that you think is maybe dumb or not super groundbreaking in any way, but a lot of people might relate to it. So finding out what is everyone relating to, and going after that. So hashtags are dead. They don't do much for you. I posted a photo accidentally without hashtags and it does as well as anything else. So,
well, I'm definitely happy then that I remembered to ask that question because that's very helpful and answers a few questions that I've been kind of bugging on my own.
yeah,
Um, but awesome, man! Thank you so much for making time. We
yeah,
had a little technical difficulty, but
it's all good.
you stayed patient with me and my
Yeah.
Starlink internet in the bush. Um, all right, man. Again, thank you so much, and I look forward to keeping track of what you're doing. And then our plan right now is we're going to be heading east. So we're in
Thanks.
west of Canada now. We're going to head east, and we're going to come into the states around like Maine and stuff like that. So
Oh, awesome.
when we're in the neighborhood, I'll definitely hit you up, and maybe we
Yeah.
can go for some wheeling or maybe some camping. Depends what time of the year it is and if the tent's in.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I would definitely love to do that. So good luck and I hope
Awesome.
everything goes well. definitely be following you and your journey. So it's exciting. Hope you guys are having fun and you run into few issues as possible.
Yeah, you and me both. All right, man. Thank you so much. Have a good night, eh?
All right, you too. Bye.
All right, man. Bye.